So everywhere I go, I see this game called Xeno Crisis, which is an independent game, which is a 16-bit arcadey shooting game. Xeno Crisis is a twin-stick shooter game, which originally the game came out as a Kickstarter project. It came out first on the Sega Genesis and PC, along with Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One versions. And then the following year, it got a Dreamcast port. It also got a PS Vita release, an FRK release, Neo Geo, and Neo Geo CD, along with the retrospective arcade machines, the SNK MVS and SNK AES, which are the more expensive ones, which they go around like $300, $400. Well, US dollars to be specific here. And as of 2023, the game came out on both Nintendo 64 and the GameCube. No, I'm not making this up. Well, the only way for you guys to play this game on the GameCube is if you mod your drive. Meaning, if you have the Xeno chip or the Pico boot or a GC loader, and then you can play the game from there. So anyways, let's talk about the game and such. So, the game itself, you play as 2 different characters from your own choosing. So, gameplay wise, if you guys played Smash TV, then you get the idea. You shoot around enemies, you go in the next area. Except, for the areas, it's not like there's like an alternative path. I wouldn't say there's areas where you shoot aliens and rescue humans. You rescue humans, you get points. Whenever you guys pre-order one of the games or Kickstarter it to back them up, they actually leave a cameo of like whatever your name is as a hostage name, which is actually pretty cool. I don't see many games or any other projects capitalizing on this, but it is cool that they actually did that. But there's also a thing where you have to like grab these army tags and use them to upgrade yourself, like more ammo, more firepower, speed, health, or maybe if you collect a certain amount, you can get yourself a continual. I want to also mention real quick too is that the SNK versions doesn't have the continue stuff. Instead, they removed it in favor of like giving you 5 credits, which is well enough for more of an arcadey standards. But the other ports, you're gonna have to buy them yourselves for like 30 army tags. There's only 2 difficulties in the game, easy and hard. No normal mode, which got criticized for because of the difficulty. There are only 7 levels. Well, I want to say 7 areas in the game. That's pretty much it. 6 bosses, 7 areas. The game can be played up to 2 players, but the 2 players can only play in locally, not online. So the game was specifically designed as a Sega Genesis game, so you can technically see why it's a local play only and not online. I'm sure you can find ways to play online when it comes to like emulation stuff. I should also mention when you shoot your gun, it's not like you have infinite ammo like you do in Smash TV. Instead, if you're running out of ammo, there's like an ammo box. And what you have to do with it is that you go on top of it, and then you get your ammo, and that's pretty much it. You shoot the aliens, you keep going, you shoot the aliens, keep going. You can also throw grenades, you can even roll and such. The arcade version, I say it's more complicated because you don't have that much buttons to deal with. But I will say the Dreamcast version does support the arcade sticks, so that's good. And, crazy enough, the little flight control accessory, apparently that also works as well. I'm not making this up, the developers tested it themselves. I played it on Nintendo 64 and it's not actually a bad port. Though it is lacking achievements, it's not a bad thing. But I did run into like a sound bug, but it's not a bad thing. From what I've heard, certain ports also have had this issue. So if you guys run into that issue, you can contact the developers themselves, send them back, and then they'll give you a reproduction version for free. Meaning they'll actually fix the sound for you. But if you have certain like systems that allows you to change the soundings of the game itself, then you can do that. The SNK ones are the big examples, but it really depends what model, from what I've gathered. Sometimes when I shoot, it off-syncs a little bit, but again, you're not going to notice it when you play it, so don't act like, oh my gosh, this is a bug that ruined the game or whatever. No, you'll be fine. The bosses, well, the difference between easy and hard is how many projectiles they shoot at you. But again, you gotta think about what your next move's gonna be, because if you do not like know what you're doing, you could end up being, well, dead. Because at certain points, you can get a little claustrophobic at places, and you're trying to get out of the way of everything, and you're just end up dying. So I've also noticed that I was playing different versions of the game, like the modern consoles and Nintendo 64 version. I haven't got the GameCube version to play yet because I still haven't modded the thing yet in order to know what I'm talking about. But I'm just gonna say this for this part. Now, depending on which port you get, certain amount of enemies aren't gonna be on your screen, meaning the boss ones as well. See, the modern console version for I've played has so many enemies when it comes to bosses, but a Nintendo 64 version from what I've played, it's quite different, and the HUD in the games are completely different depending on which system you're on. Like, for example, the SNK ones are all like yellowy, and they have the credit thing in the bottom. Meanwhile, you play Nintendo 64, it's white. Same with the home console games you guys can play on. I should mention that some of these ports, depending on which system you get, they do support memory cards. Yes, the Nintendo 64 and GameCube ones as well. So meaning you can actually save. And certain games also have, and certain ports also has rumble support. Not every system's gonna have rumble support because they weren't invented, but the Nintendo 64 version does have rumble support. That I can confirm. So if you guys want to load rumble, this is for you. But again, if you guys want an arcade version, you might as well get yourself the SNK MVS or AES for around like 300 bucks. You install it in your arcade cabinet and you can just play it. But if you want a much cheaper alternative to the SNK ones from the arcade, then the Neo Geo CD version is for you. But what I've heard is that the CD version lacks voice acting. Yeah, certain ports lack voice acting, but the arcade one has it. I don't know why this is the case, considering that some of the cartridges do have plenty of room, but I don't know what they use the room for is the question. But yeah, there's also different weapons of choices, but they only randomly spawn whenever they want. But they're a limited time use, so you have to be a little smart when it comes to using those weapons. You got the flamethrower, shotgun, and some other stuff around there. So, there's also a soundtrack you guys can order online as well. The developers themselves, Bitmap, happens to have their own shop where you can buy other versions of the game. Like I was mentioning, the Sega Genesis, the SNK systems, Nintendo 64, GameCube, and Dreamcast. But if you don't want to get the physical versions of these games, you can always download the ISO files from them, which can be pretty cheaper. But again, if you really want to be like some sort of collector and you just want to get some of these games, you can. Also, I want to mention some of these games happen to be region free. Yes, these games that are selling are region free, but it really depends like which cartridge you really want, because certain systems aren't going to take them. Oh yeah, and one more thing before I end up the video. I should also mention that the rooms in the game are automatically randomly generated. Meaning you may have a different experience when you start playing the game over and over and over again. Because I noticed that certain enemies weren't in the original run that I was playing on. So it does make sense. So you could say this can add into replay value. If you guys are retro collectors, this is for you. There's two different endings. One bad, one good, and it really depends of what you're doing. Well, in terms of like probably the final level, I haven't reached the final level as a recording, but I have reached level 4, which I tell you this, I almost beat the boss. And now I'm on level 5, and it was a short-lived experience per se, but I'm getting there. I'm getting better at the game now, so yeah, I think getting a friend would be like better if you guys want to make it more easy. I don't think there's any friendly fire from what I've looked at, so yeah. I hope you guys will enjoy playing the game and will have fun, as I think the game will bring you back to the past when it comes to games like Smash TV and such. So if you guys play Smash TV, well, then you know what you're doing.